Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Josh Tischler, Joey Bardack, and Drew Barton will be with us soon, I hope. Today, we're going to make predictions for early conference tournaments that are starting this week, and we'll talk to perhaps the most surprising mid-major star in the country, Drake guard Bennett Stirtz. But before we begin, we'll do our college notebook. But even before that, I'm going to ask Josh and Joey how they're doing. How are you guys doing?
I can't complain, Rich. Exciting times. March is here. Getting involved. All these tournaments coming around. So just excited for what these mid-major teams can do.
Before our last show, you actually got to attend an Indiana game as the media. How did that experience go?
Yeah, it was great. I thought everything went really smoothly. The SID was very helpful. I was able to go into the press conference, set everything up what I needed to. And then, I got up to the media area, it's a little high, the viewing area was a little much, but, it was still a great game. IU, it's a great game with Penn State. They came out on top. A lot of great players, just a great showing from the fans as well. And hopefully the Hoosiers can keep rolling.
Is there anybody in particular were you at floor level or were you above floor level? Because typically that's where they put us. They put us like at the top of the first section.
Yeah. I was more like I was above floor level. So I was kind of, I was like all the way in the top in the first, I guess, row. And then, so I was able to kind of see like the fans just like all around there. And I still had a great, I was able to see really well within the game. There's not really a bad seat. And Simon Scott. So I had no problems with that.
Sometimes if you're right there on the court, you really just get to see things
you
don't get to see on TV. You always hear the people on TV saying, you really can't judge a guy until you've seen him in person. Well, even as the media, we never really get to see them, totally up close a lot. I mean, we get to talk to them and stuff, but we don't always get to see them from a much better vantage point than we would on TV. So
I was able to walk around when I first got there and go on the court and see the players practice and you weren't kidding about that. I'm going up against seeing Mackenzie Mbaka. He's listed at 6'9", 6'10", and he's a gigantic man. He's much bigger than what you see on TV. It's crazy. Rumar Ballo, 7-footer. It's these guys are massive. So, but it was a really cool experience. I was very grateful for the opportunity. So it was awesome.
But was there anybody who caught your eye that before that game, and before that game, that maybe changed your opinion of?
I would say, honestly, I'm really loving. There's two players that I saw that was like, wow, okay, these guys can really play. At first I thought Luke Goody. I always knew he was a great shooter. I think he's got the best percentage in the Big Ten, 3-point percentage, and he's been really playing well as of late. But I was really surprised defensively how his mechanics were, just how he's moving laterally, and I see him talking on defense. The switching. It's something that you need, and to take the next jump. The NBA and seeing that continually evolving his game, and I'm seeing him put the ball more on the floor, which is it's good to see the playmaking ability is definitely there. So if he's able to get a medical year for next year because he missed his sophomore year for Indiana, he would love to go back. But if he can't, I could see a couple teams in the NBA looking for shooters, looking for a guy who can make a play.
Duncan Robinson scored 24 points the other night, which I still am amazed that guy's in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I know he's 6'9", maybe 6'10", but the only thing he can do is shoot. Unless his game's changed a lot since I've last, I haven't really seen much this year, but I haven't seen him this year.
Right, and he got a big contract too. I saw a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was
making $20 million.
Right.
Yeah,
and then playoff time came and they didn't play it.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is people like Kobe Bryant and Luke Goody, who are 6'7" and can knock it down and actually are decent athletes, they can and contribute in other ways that Duncan Robinson never did.
Right.
I mean, he's got to be like 6'10", and he probably averaged, in college, maybe a point one blocks per game, So hell, it is last year at Michigan. He sometimes he wouldn't get off the bench.
Right. Yeah. No, true.
I mean,
I don't know.
and that's somewhat of an indictment on the NBA. I mean, the NBA is just going crazy with the lack of defense. The Duncan Robinson can score 24 points.
Yeah, I know that's ridiculous. It's unreal, So and like, why not give like a guy like Luke Goody? He could definitely go in and make a couple threes a game. Like,
sure.
So we'll see. And my second guy who I've kind of been high on for Penn State, and they played a really good game. I thought they defensively they've gotten better, but the one guy that's really been who I thought was has been their best player all year has been Yannick Konan Niederhauser.
Right.
I think I walked past him, and I know he's like 7 foot, but that dude was bigger than Ballo. That dude's ginormous. And just from like what I was watching,
you mean taller, not bigger.
taller, not like big, not wider, but just like more taller and massive than him. And and I was watching him early in the game. He was getting whatever he wanted in that paint over Ballo, and his post work was really tremendous to see. The whole offense basically runs through him, and just seeing his playmaking abilities really good for a big. I'm seeing him passing out. DeMarco Dunn, and all these other guys that can shoot the ball, and his rim protection is probably one of the best in the Big Ten. Yep. And yet he's only a junior. I don't expect him to go to the NBA right away. I could see him another year at Penn State, and this is going to be. I think this year's draft is I think it's a very good draft, and next year you don't know what the draft's going to be like, and him improving his game at Penn State, building on what he's done this year. I could see him, in the draft next year.
Okay.
So,
and Joey, how are you doing?
I'm good, Rich. I'm excited for spring break, which is coming up real soon. Josh, me and a buddy of mine are actually going over to Indiana to watch the Ohio State-Indiana game. It'll be a big game for both teams.
Sure.
And I'm just excited to have a week off of school.
Yeah.
See, that's my kind of spring break. Go watch more basketball.
Right, yeah.
So what I got to do since we last had a show was I spent the weekend in New York, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. I saw Duke, Illinois on Saturday night. Then I saw St. John's and UConn the following morning. It really was such a short turnaround. I could have slept in the garden. I might as well have. I think what impressed me about, Duke really handled Illinois. Of course, we know Illinois didn't have Morez Johnson, and Duke is one of the biggest teams in the country. So without Morez Johnson, Illinois is not that they don't have many bigs. So that not having Morez Johnson in that game hurt a lot. But what really impressed me though was Duke. Illinois has some great guards, and we're talking about, Kasparas Jukashonis to being a lottery pick. And I'm not arguing about that, but what I thought in the first half or second half, I don't remember which, it's just both halves really. But when you have Keelan Boswell, who's a really good athlete, it's trimmed down this year, been very good at attacking the rim. You have Jukashonis, who likes to penetrate and create from that, and they really Duke perimeter defense wouldn't allow Illinois to penetrate. They just stayed right in front of those Illinois guards, and Illinois really was just, their offense was just stymied, and it kind of spiraled from there. St. John's and UConn, by the way, for both games, I'd say the audience was like, it was maybe like 60-40 Duke. And then for the second game, it was kind of like 60-40 St. John's. I was really surprised how many UConn fans were there, but I was also really surprised how many Illinois fans were there. But nonetheless, St. John's prevailed. Kadari Richmond got off to a good start. Pitino said after the game he was really hurting. He said he had a groin problem and he thought he was going to have to miss some time, but I don't think he has. So apparently RJ Lewis was just coming off of an injury, but he played, but he was about the only St. John's player not to have a good game. Devontae Smith had a great game. Richmond had a great game. Zuby had a great game. Aaron Scott had a great game. Scott, too, is not really 100% right now. But they made, I don't remember what they shot from three, but it was a good enough percentage. And it was at the time they had, I think they may have shot 40% in that game, but for three straight games, they had made 33% or better. And to me, if this team, the way they play defense, so I'm talking about St. John's, if they can make 33% as a team, I think that's good enough. Now, UConn, I was really just, Caravan made 3 threes in that game, and it was the first time in almost 2 months that he had a game with more than 2 threes. Most of his games, he only had about 1. Who's the sharpshooter for UConn? The young kid?
Caravan? Oh, Liam McNeely?
No, not the other ball. Solo Ball.
Oh, Solo
Ball had a miserable game. Now, of course, St. John's going to do that to you. But McNeely, I guess McNeely was so-so. Caravan was so-so. But, Reed had a pretty good game for UConn, and he's really coming on for them. But I just, I think it was clear after that game that St. John's is the best team in the Big East. I don't think anyone's going to argue that at this point. All right, so we'll move on to the notebook and look what's up top here, Josh. So I'll let you you put these stories in, so I'll let you read them off and start the discussion.
Yeah. So, the first topic, I want to talk about, we just, on the topic of the Johnnies, they just won their first Big East regular season title in 40 years. And coming from a St. John's fan, going to all the games when I was a kid, Carnesecca Arena, seeing this, this season has kind of been magical, like a fever dream in a sense. And, the amount of success that I've seen for this team, I think the sky's the limit. I think I've been really proud of how this team has just coexisted together and just how they've played. I think Coach Pacino already has his name written for Coach of the Year, I believe, and, lifting up that trophy, with Zuby, RJ Lewis, all those guys, it's just surreal to see that. And, in regards of, their, tournament ability, I really don't know what this team can do. I saw Patino the other day. He said this team can lose in the first round or they can make it to the Final Four. It's really, I think their defense will always be there. I think they are a top 5 defense in the country. The question is going to be the offense, I believe, and the shooting. As of late, they've been shooting better. They're getting good production out of even their bench has been getting better. Sudoku, even Io was a walk-on at Iona a couple years back, and I was getting real legit depth minutes from the bench and has been playing tremendous ball. Ruben Prey, Leotopoulos, those guys. And, they've had injuries, losing Jaden Glover, Brady Dunlap. And, but again, it's next man up mentality that,
and for those
that New York.
And for those who don't know, Glover was like I believe their top incoming freshman from this country, not counting Prey. and Brady Dunlap was their best returning shooter, and probably the only pure shooter on the team.
Yeah, and but again, it's all comes down. This is a New York made team. First, it's the next man up mentality, and as the season continues, wrapping up in Marquette and the Big East tournament, we'll see what this team can do. But I think they've got a real chance to make some good noise in the tournament.
One thing I want to say, a couple things there. Number one, when Pitino at the press conference after he beat UConn, I have never seen a coach more giddy, more happy, more joking, more just, he was just talking about everything. He started talking about Russ Dickulus and Peyton Siva. And my question, after he had just gone on about Peyton and Russ, or not, he didn't talk so much about Russ. He talked about Peyton Siva. And I asked him about Davion Smith because he had a brilliant game. And I asked him about his athleticism and his speed and how noticeable it is. And he said that Smith was one of the keys of the team because when he's in the game, that team can play so much faster. And Smith just blows by people. I think he's one of the fastest guards in the country.
He's like, when he gets going with the ball, like he's zooms right past everyone and like in immediate second can make a huge impact. Playmaking, you go to the rim. His shooting ability is, I think, very underrated in his game. But yeah, no, he's quick on his feet.
But I asked him of all the guards he had coached over the years, and I said, like Peyton and Russ, and he was kind of like a guy who had a couple of drinks or something, he's just all laughing and giddy, and he started to laugh, and he goes, well, he's definitely not like Russ, because nobody was like Russ. That's why I named him Russ Dickulus. And but he talked about how he has Smith reminds him a lot of Peyton Siva. So yeah, the other point I want to make is the last time St. John's, I remember the last time St. John's won the regular season title because it was my 49th birthday.
Oh yeah.
Joke. That's I'm gonna cut that out because no one laughed. That would make me 89 years old, folks. Anyway, Drew has joined us. Drew, do you have any comments on St. John's winning the Big East regular season title?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I apologize for being late, fellas. We had the basketball awards meeting for Sonoma State, so that took forever. We actually did pretty well on the men's and women's side, so I had to prep all of that stuff. So real life work was calling, but I really like this St. John's team. I heard you guys mention the individual players. I'll just quickly speak to what I love as a team. These guys play so hard and they're so well coached. And I think we talked about in the chat, if this team can just shoot at like an average 33%, 34% clip for the next couple of weeks, this team is terrifying, in my opinion, because you're not going to out hustle them. They have the individual workhorses to carry them in a game in, game out setting. And I know for a fact there aren't many coaches on the sideline that want to look down the line and see Pitino in a white suit standing there. So I think this team, I really like this team. I was jumped on this team's bandwagon pretty early on in the year. Part of it was just kind of fun, like, New York basketball's back. It was kind of fun. But then as you saw them play, like, they're punching teams in the mouth. It's not like in recent memory, I can't remember a team that punched a Dan Hurley squad. And I know this team is not the UConn team of the last 2 years, but like actually punk them. It was like a street fight, and the other guy wanted no part of it. And the Ada Haney hate watch was on full effect. I mean, he didn't even get in the game, so there's that. But, it was pretty pleasant to see. So I really like this team, and I would not want to see them because defense travels in March, coaching travels in March. And like I said, if this team could just figure out the jump shooting for, the next 2-3 weeks, this team has got a really, really high ceiling.
Yeah. Joey, any thoughts?
I think you guys mostly covered it. I'll say at the start of the year, I was a little bit less down on them just because, I hadn't heard much from them in years past, but I've been watching them more and more as the season's picked up, and I've been watching them rise through the ranks, and they may be one of the best defensive teams I've seen in a while. They're ferocious around the ball, and y'all mentioned the players. Everyone's been playing well. They're getting hot at the right time. Rick Pitino is definitely the kind of, I think that so much of March Madness comes down to coaching, and they have that with Patino. So yeah, I think sky's the limit for this team. Absolutely.
Right. And we were right on this in the preseason. Jake and I both said during the Big East preview that we both picked UConn, but we said St. John's was a close second. And then on our preseason predictions, Josh predicted that they would win the Big East tourney, and Jake won up to you by saying St. John's was going to the Final Four. So so we've been a big fan of this team from the start. You could just see by the people that they brought in. People, like, if you're paying attention to college basketball, you knew Aaron Scott was a really good player, came from a really good defensive team, had really been coached well on the defensive end. This is a guy who's like, 6'8". He could do a little bit of everything. Versatile defender. You knew Richmond, over the years, his career was probably slowed by Jim Boeheim, but we won't get into that today. Although I'd love to have Kadari on the show to have him talk about that. Boeheim really was hard on Richmond. You know that? I mean, like, really hard on him.
Mm.
All right, so we'll move on to story number 2. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so this actually was today, but they just announced at Virginia Tech that Mike Young will be returning next year. And as I'm not a Hokie fan, but last couple of years haven't been great for the Virginia Tech men's basketball team. They haven't done anything in the last couple of years, and but they did mention that the school is committed to increasing more money into the program, the NIL package, which has been an issue for the team for the last couple seasons. So, they're bringing them back. This year's been a very down year for the ACC as a whole. And, seeing this team not doing great, they're 8 and 10 in the ACC, 13 and 16 overall. It's hard to see, you're bringing back the same guy last couple of seasons that haven't done much. So it's definitely a questionable call on their end, but if getting more money involved into the program, things can change and something can happen there.
Personally, I like Mike Young a lot. I think he's an offensive genius. He likes to run a high motion offense that features a lot of shooting. Very similar to, say, what Sean Miller runs at Xavier. And what he needs on that team is he needs shooters. He's always been an offensive coach. This year's team is actually more built defensively just because they really didn't have much coming in beside Toby Lawal. And Toby Lawal is basically their leading scorer, and he basically came in with the reputation of not being much more than a rim runner and a great defender. So I don't think Mike Young's had a fair shot. And I will say, as bad as the ACC this year, he's not the worst in the ACC this year. There are a lot of other big name schools that are behind him. So he's done better than, schools like Syracuse. They may have a better record than Pittsburgh, and this is a team that was ranked at one point. So, yeah, I gotta think that given the right weapons, I think Mike Young could do it, though. As I said, that team's always been offensive. And I've always thought, even when they were good, they never had the defense that was going to do it. So any other thoughts about Mike Young?
I just think in general, this is going to be a really interesting kind of case study for coaching in general around college basketball going forward. I know the roster, if I'm not mistaken, is definitely on the younger side, like average age. If I'm not mistaken, they're on the younger side in the ACC. I mean, it's still a down year, so you would have hoped they'd done a little bit more, and I'm sure their NIL package isn't on par with some of the other teams. But I think that's going to be really interesting when you start evaluating coaches in this like new era of like how much extra kind of leeway do you get being able to, I don't want to say hide behind, but be able to kind of back like, well, I don't have the money that these other teams have. Like, is that going to buy guys more time to be like, hey, like I'm a solid coach, nothing special, but like, hey, if you gave me more money, I could do more. Like, let's say that they do bump up the NIL. This roster is going to get a little bit older, like they are on the younger side, and they still underperform. Like, does that change the conversation? Like, I just think in general, this is going to be kind of a case study where we look at a lot of coaches that are kind of middling and be like, is it that they're a bad coach? Is it that they don't have the money to compete? Like, where are we at? Because I do agree that, like, I don't think Young's a bad coach. So, and I do know money has changed the landscape. I'm just curious how much more resources are going to, really change things, because the ACC sucked this year. I would have expected them to be better, to be quite honest. And like the ACC was bad this year, point blank.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think it's just be interesting in general to see, like,
I mean,
how many coaches are going to be able to kind of shield themselves with NIL. We don't have as much. Like, give me more money and I'll give me 2 more years and a couple more $1 million and see how much time that buys, guys.
I will say that, and I discussed this with somebody in the athletic department of Virginia Tech last year, not this year, last year, that I hoped that Coach Young didn't get fired. Now, he didn't. He didn't get fired, and he came back for this year. But I was thinking it might happen last year. And then this year, they came in with a really, really sorry-looking roster to compete in a conference like the ACC. Turns out, though, that ACC just wow. All right. Next story, Josh.
Yeah. So this past weekend, the Kentucky team just announced that their second leading scorer, Jackson Robinson's going to be out for the year. And I believe that's a big hit for this Kentucky squad.
Yeah.
And, losing out on this guy, I was very high on him last year. I thought he was a great player with BYU, and, bringing him over with Coach Pope, it's definitely a tough loss for them, especially for the tournament too.
Kentucky has just been ravaged by injuries. Kirk Reese has been out for a couple of months. Lamont Butler has been in and out of the lineup all year, and he's still not 100%. We saw in the Auburn game, he just didn't look like the Lamont Butler we're used to seeing. Trent Noah, I think, got hurt in that game, and now he's questionable moving forward, at least for the next game. Kentucky has just been struggling. They've had to just play a lot of people in the backcourt, because it's not like, they lost one big and one guard and one forward. It's all been in the guard spot pretty much.
Yeah.
And so they've ended up playing, Noah and Trent Perry. And if anyone has seen Trent Perry play, the kid is a bucket, but he also, my God, how tall is that kid? 5'10", 5'9".
Travis Perry. Sorry, I was confused.
We got my T's mixed up. Yeah, Travis Perry. I mean, he looks about 5'9".
Yeah, he's a small guy.
Do we know how big he is?
He's like 6'1".
Is he really?
Yeah, but I think we all know that as an SID, I can tell you that 6'1" might be more like 5'11".
I don't even know if he's 5'11", man. He looks so small. He looks like that kid from Oklahoma that went crazy this weekend, Forsythe.
Oh yeah, he went crazy.
Yeah, he scored 25 points. They still lost, but
in the second half. Too.
But those two players are very similar, and they also both look like they're 6 foot at best. But anyway, I was really high on Kentucky. I picked them for the Final Four. Kreese is going to have to come back soon. And Butler's going to have to get healthy. And if it's a shoulder, we've seen this with Rutgers, with Jeremiah Williams. He injured that shoulder, and it's been a problem all year. Usually you can play with them, but the problem is they keep on popping out, and it won't go away until you get surgery and, let it rest for months. And obviously Butler's not doing that. He's just coming back when the pain is gone, and then it pops out again. And then we're right back to where we were. I suppose I should say that I'm just kind of guessing here as to that it's a shoulder separation or something of that nature. It could be something completely different, so I could be way off base. But typically when you suffer a separation, at least most of the time, they continue to linger until you get them fixed. But maybe it's not a separation, which would be probably good news for Kentucky. All right. Any other thoughts on Kentucky?
Yeah, I was a little bit down on Kentucky to start, just because I typically prefer teams that have a number one scorer that I can kind of rely on. And Kentucky is a lot more of a committee team. We have a bunch of different players: OA, Robinson, Butler, Brea. Kind of see whoever steps up in the moment. And I think for a team like that to make a run in March, you kind of need everyone to be playing well. You need anyone to be able to have a big night. And Jackson Robinson, I mean, he was second in the team in scoring. In the big game against A&M, he dropped 22. Like, he's been, of the committee, he's been one of the guys they've relied on the most. So to lose him is brutal. And they're going to need, guys like OA and Brea and Butler to really step up. And, they're going to need those guys to put up 20 or so a game, I think, to have a chance, to get anywhere past like the round of 32.
Here's the thing. When Creason went down, Jackson Robinson moved as the backup point guard. Then Butler went down. Jackson all of a sudden becomes the starting point guard. Then he goes down, and Travis Perry becomes the fourth starting point guard for Kentucky. That's why they need Creason. And Butler. They need Butler and Creason to get healthy. I will say that Andrew Carr, too. Now, he's the one big that got hurt for this team. He's finally rounding. He was actually one of their better players early on in the season.
He got really good early in the season.
Yeah, then he got hurt, and he's kind of been, kind of absent. But of late, he's starting to pick it up, and he's looking more healthy. Any other thoughts on Kentucky before we move on? Go ahead, Josh. You're on.
Yep. All right. So my last story that I've got, got to come with my Hoosiers. Are they back in the dance? They've been stringing on some good wins as of late. They had it was a big win, a big second half against Purdue. That was a tremendous win. Winning at Michigan State. They just beat Penn State, and now they played Washington at Washington. They manhandled Washington the whole game. From the start. And, I think, as of now, as of late, how the bubble's looking, there's some very iffy teams, even from this past weekend has lost. I think right now they're looking like they should be in the tournament, maybe not even past the first four, I believe, And even if they win tomorrow against Oregon, then you're really thinking, okay, this team's already, maybe they can make some real noise. I believe, with Coach Woodson, he's going to resign now, I think it definitely leaves some pressure off of him. He's not, doesn't have to look over his shoulder about anything about, next year, he can finally, just relax, coach the guys. And, I really, people, there's a lot of noise, from Hoosier fans about who they want, just like a lot of talk. But I have to say that this team has really stuck together through it all.
Yeah.
From this whole season. And it's hard, especially, these are still kids, by the way, a lot of slander throughout the, the season, it was a rough couple months, starting off, but, they're really starting to play some really good ball. Luke Goody, Anthony Leal has come out of nowhere. He's probably, I think, could in good contention of being, Big Ten Player of the Year. That dude gets at least 2-3 steals a game. I'm seeing him. He's a lockdown defender, and he's playing some big minutes in the rotation. And, I could see this team making some decent noise in, the Big Ten tournament, but, they got to continue with this continuity.
So, Joey, as long as we're talking about bubble teams in the Big Ten, Ohio State, the last time I saw them was earlier last week. I didn't see them over the weekend, but Aaron Bradshaw was out. Was that because of the flu?
Yeah, I believe so.
And Mobley, too, had the flu, but he played through it?
I think that's right.
So, So where does Ohio State stand now? Because I know they've been kind of slipping since we talked to Micah Parrish.
Yeah, so March Madness is all about peaking at the right time, and naturally, Ohio State is doing the exact opposite. We lost to Michigan, and then in my first ever play-by-play radio call, we lost by 20 to Northwestern without two of their best players.
Right.
Speaking of which, I think KJ Wyndham's going to be a really special player in the years to come on Northwestern, the freshman. But anyways, and we lose to UCLA. Bounce back against USC. So it's been a really tough stretch. Even if we do meander our way into the tournament, into March Madness, I don't have too much faith for us. But we have Nebraska tomorrow night, which I'm hoping will be a win.
Is that home? Is that home or away?
At home, which should help us, though it didn't against Northwestern. But escaping the UCLA USC road trip with one win is good enough potentially. So as long as we can take care of business against Nebraska, I really think that there's a big chance that the Ohio State Indiana game could have real March Madness ramifications.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's very possible the winner of that game gets in. I mean, obviously there's still the Big Ten tournament to go through, and maybe one team makes a run, maybe one team loses early, but if not, that game could really do it. And yeah, Ohio State, they've just been struggling. Like in the Northwestern game, they just couldn't buy a bucket. They have Parrish, Thornton, and Mobley, and other than that, they get no scoring. Devin Royal will have a game of 20, like one every 3 or 4 games, but they're through a big portion of the Northwestern game, like no one on the bench had any points. So it's been like, you'll get 15 or 20 from Mobley, 15 or 20 from Thornton, but then that's it. So if we are going to have any chance, we're going to need Royal to be consistent scorers. We're going to need like Thornton, Mobley, and Parrish to all play perfectly. And we need Bradshaw on the court because when he's not, we don't have a center. We've been playing Stewart down low. We've been playing Devin Royal and Mahaffey down low, and they're solid players. But, even someone like Matthew Nichols.
They're all forwards, and really, Mahaffey is really a small forward playing power forward.
Exactly. And then, guys like Matthew Nicholson and Ade Mara are just going to eat them alive just due to their size. Right. So we really need Bradshaw, or we need Ugovin or Austin Parks to step up. They're both 7-footers, but they really haven't done anything this year. So I don't know. Mixed feelings about the Buckeyes right now.
Right. So, Drew, I've been seeing you grumbling about your Zags in the group chat. Now, I haven't seen the Zags play since the first St. Mary's game. So
I was behind enemy lines there.
Oh, right. That was you were at that game the same. I was at some game at the same time somewhere.
Yes. So I was at the game in Moraga. So that was start of the month. I think that was Feb 1st, actually. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason, and I'm going to sound like a spoiled ass clown if I can be completely honest, but you kind of expect things with Gonzaga, especially the WCC. Losing more than one game is like sacrilegious. They had a really bad stretch there when they lost back-to-back games at Oregon State, at Santa Clara, where they gave up over 200 points, or about 200 points in 2 games. Now one went to overtime. Those were brutal losses.
Losing to Oregon State is bad.
That is, in my opinion, they have one bad loss this year, that's the bad loss. I think every other loss, you're like, okay, I can kind of wrap my head around good teams, tournament caliber teams, or, whatever. But that loss, to lose the way they did, was brutal. And they should have lost in regulation. Ike hit a three-pointer. Ike hit a three-pointer that he actually traveled on to send it to overtime, if I'm being subjective. But look, they're going to be okay. I think Joey kind of hit the nail on the head with the analysis of it's all about peaking at the right time. I've learned that in college basketball, a really good way to lose money is to bet against few in the crew. You don't go to 9 straight Sweet 16s and, sell, back out on the team just because. I mean, we're talking about arguably the most disappointing year they've had in over a decade, and they're going to finish the regular season 23-8, with the vast majority of those losses coming against tournament caliber teams, AP ranked teams and whatnot. So I think they're going to figure it out. I think they are figuring out. I still think the Sweet 16 Elite Eight is a very reasonable goal. I mean, they're up to 8 in the net. I think they're number 9 or 10 in Ken Palm. So all the metrics tell you that you should love the team. They passed the eye test. Both St. Mary's losses were brutal because the first 8 minutes of the game, 10 minutes of the game, St. Mary's was 9 for 10 from the floor, banked in back-to-back threes, and was up 8-0 on fouls. So that was a bit of a hole to climb out of, and they did. They ended up taking the lead in that game, couldn't hold on, and then losing at home against St. Mary's on senior night. Joe Few started and got some burn, a little bit too much burn, and St. Mary's scored on him 4 straight times, and it was 11-0 to start the game. And Gonzaga actually outscored them the rest of the way, like on a points per minute. But you spot a good team, an 11-0 lead, you're probably not winning. So, they're putting it together. They just handled Santa Clara, handled San Francisco. Good quality teams, that I think don't get enough credit. And, look, when you've got Graham Ike and Ryan Nemhard leading the way as a 1-2 punch and 4 other guys averaging double figures with Few at the helm, I will say this team is dead when they're eliminated from March. So,
okay. I got one question for you. I told Joey to pump the brakes on Michi Johnson, and I didn't necessarily say that to you about Khalif Battle, but in between the lines, I think you could read that I was
for sure
telling you to pump the brakes. So what's your opinion of him now that you've seen him play for 20-some games?
So obviously I saw a lot of him last year at Arkansas, and that kind of mess that team turned out to be. But what everyone remembers was that last 8-game stretch where he was averaging close to 27 a night or whatever it was. I still think he fits a very important role on this team as somebody that can get incendiary like that, especially when you look at a lot of their best players are traditional slower post guy, and Nemhard, who's really more of a pass first point guard. He's, as Jake said way back when we did this to start the year, he's been incredibly up and down. There's been moments where he's looked like the best player in the WCC. There's been moments where you're sitting there going, what the hell are you doing? The last 2 games, Santa Clara and USF, he's been really, really good in my opinion. He's been really controlled, played within the offense, has understood the moment when he needs to get going and when he needs to hold back. And when he does that, he's an asset. I think in the 2 St. Mary's games, he was really frustrating, particularly the first one, because I think he was so amped up that he was playing he didn't do anything really, but he was just out there running around. So he still matters, and I think for this team to really have any chance of doing something special, he has to get hot and stay hot. But I had this conversation with my dad, who's a basketball coach, and I think at the end of the day, this team's biggest issue is just you have so many guys who need the ball, are good players, but they're good players who need the ball, that the talent is there, but the fit probably just wasn't a great match. And I think we've seen that with a lot of teams this year. So,
yeah.
I think
that's been an epidemic. That's been an epidemic. Kansas is another team.
Exactly.
With the AJ Store.
I think that is the problem they have, is they've got probably 4 or 5 guys that can all really do great things, but all of them have to have the ball in their hands. Ajayi from Pepperdine was the go-to guy there. Now he's a role player. Battle is a scorer through and through, needs the ball. Ike is a post guy, needs the ball. Nemhard, as great as he is as a playmaker, best passer I've seen in a long time, the ball's not in his hands. He can't pass. He can't use his best weapon. Huff's a scorer. So I still have them going to the Sweet 16. I will have them going to the Sweet 16 probably till the day I die. But, it's March and it's Gonzaga. Good things usually happen for that team this time of the year. So we'll see.
All right. So we're going to bring on our guest now, Bennett Stirtz from Drake, one of the surprise teams in the country this year. And Stirtz has definitely been one of the pleasant surprise players. Our special guest today is Drake guard Bennett Stirtz, the heavy favorite to win the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year award. This season, Bennett is leading the Missouri Valley in plus-minus offensive and defensive rating, total points as well as points per game with 19, assists per game with 6, steals per game at 2.2, minutes per game at 39.4. which we're going to have to talk about. He is also averaging 4.4 rebounds per game while shooting 50% from the field, 38% from three, 79% from the foul line. Lastly, he leads the nation in both minutes played and win shares. All right, we have a lot. First of all, Bennett, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. As you can tell, I'm hyped up. How is the weather in Des Moines?
It's actually been pretty nice. It was actually 60 today, so can't complain with that. Yeah,
Whoa.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's still chilly here in Jersey. All right, so much to talk about, and the first thing I want to point out is I talked about all those impressive numbers, and some naysayers who are in the numbers like I am, might say, oh, he's playing a lot of minutes. That's why he has those numbers. Well, check this out. I'm going to bring up your page here. So you also lead, you're second in the Missouri Valley in player efficiency rating, which isn't affected by minutes played. You are first in assist percentage at almost 35%. You are, steal percentage, 3.7. You're first in that in the conference. And of course, offensive and defensive rating and plus minus aren't affected by minutes played either. So your numbers are certainly legit. The point I'm trying to get to is, with that said, I think in a lot of ways, your story and the team story is probably the most interesting story of this season, but you don't hear about it a lot. So how much media attention have you been getting personally, and how much has the team been getting national media attention?
I mean, we're definitely getting a lot more as the season goes on. But in the beginning of the year, we didn't have many believers in us, and the media wasn't really on us. And once we won the Charleston tournament, we beat Miami, FAU, and Vandy. That's when the media started coming around, and definitely late in the year, as we make a March push, they're definitely coming around.
Right. Okay. Your four of your starters are, I believe, are former D2 players, or all five D2 players?
All four of them are from Northwest from last year, yeah.
And
we've got
so
one.
Is Cam Manoir, is he the only starter that's not a former D2 guy?
Yep, he transferred in from Wyoming.
Right.
Yep.
So I don't think many thought before the season started you guys would have a winning record this season. You certainly weren't picked to win the conference, let alone have a 27-3 record. That you beat the teams you mentioned, Miami, FAU, Vandy, and Kansas State after that. So, I mean, Kansas State had to see you coming. So can you talk about the team a little bit, including the other pieces that surround you, and what makes this team so darn tough to beat?
Yeah, first off, our coaches brought in some great guys. With the transfer portal and everything, it was pretty crazy with every team, and we only brought in 12 guys. So we're not practicing with a lot, and they were very particular in who they recruited and who we got. And I mean, as teams gone on throughout the seasons, they figured out that the players aren't meshing well, but we all like each other. We like hanging around. We hang out with each other outside of practice and everything like that. And it just shows the chemistry we have and the culture we're building here.
How did you guys not win the D2 national championship, which I think went to Minnesota State last year?
Yep, they beat us. Thanks for bringing it up. They beat us on a buzzer beater. So
when in the tourney?
Yeah, Sweet 16, I believe.
Okay.
So.
My alma mater is East Stroudsburg, and we were ranked for a while, but we didn't make the tournament because we lost to Millersville toward the end of the season and then didn't win the Pennsylvania Conference tournament. However, I am going to a D2 game tomorrow night, partially as a fan, partially as a scout. Pennsylvania Conference tournament, which includes Gannon. I'm sure you're familiar. Maybe you're not. You're on, but we're all.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So, Westchester, Millersville, schools like that. So I'm going to go watch a Pennsylvania Conference tournament game tomorrow night. So cool. Excited about that. So despite coming from a D2 school to a program like Drake, your stats haven't slipped. In fact, some of them have gone up. Now, most players, when you see them step up a level, I'll give you an example. Missouri Valley Conference player last year, Cade, he went to North Carolina.
Cade Tyson?
Yes, right.
Yep.
So he just moved from the Missouri Valley to the ACC, and he's not doing so well. Now, that could be a lot of things for that, and he's just an example. But your numbers have somewhat, in some areas, have gone up. How do you explain that?
Well, first off, that it's a testament of how good D2 basketball is. There's some great hoopers, great coaches there, and it was great basketball played in the D2 level. And honestly, there wasn't that big of a jump, other than like the bigs. The bigs they're just bigger, quicker, stronger, D1 level. But yeah, our staff has done a great job with all of us, just putting us in the right spots and helping our whole team succeed, not just me.
Right. I want to talk about your coach a little bit. Ben McCollum also came. So he brought 4 guys from your school plus himself to Drake, where he won 4 national championships at Northwest Missouri. He has to be in the running for National Coach of the Year, I would think. But what's it like playing for him, and what do you think makes him so successful?
I mean, yeah, he's one of the best coaches in the country, no bias there. But yeah, what makes him so special is he brings it every day. He doesn't have an off day. And then when some of us are having a rough day, he pushes us past the limit. And then another thing is he makes us a better man off the court. Which is really good to me. And he cares not just what we do on the court, but off the court as well.
Right. I heard during the broadcast of the Northern Iowa game that he's really someone. Now, you lead the conference both offensive and defensive efficiency, but I heard he's really a stickler for details on defense. Would you say that's true?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's more of a defensive guy, and he would say that as well. But we played last night. And we watched film for an hour on defense today, so he's intense with that.
Right. I'm going to pass you over to Joey.
Hey, Bennett. Nice to meet you. What would you say were some of the biggest differences between playing at Northwest Missouri State versus playing at Drake now?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but obviously the bigs are a little better. But another thing is physicality. It's more physical in the D1 game, and then pace of play is a little faster. But yeah, those are probably the main 3 things that I can think of.
Gotcha. And then Rich mentioned it a little bit earlier, but playing against the power conference teams really hasn't slowed you down. Great games against Kansas State, Miami, Vandy, FAU. You averaged 19 points, 4.3 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 2.3 steals. In fact, those numbers are even a little bit better than your season averages. So does that surprise you? And then back in November, what were you thinking when you stepped on the court versus a team like Miami that was in the Final Four just 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think just playing our game, no other game is going to get, I mean, every game is the same game to me. Nothing's going to speed me up. And I feel like I just play better in the bigger games. That's just me, and that's just who I've been my whole basketball career. And I think I proved that.
Yeah. And it's been a long season so far. You've led the nation in minutes per game. How are you feeling going into March Madness?
Feeling good. Hopefully we can make it there. We've got Arch Madness first, our conference tournament. So we're just going to take it one game at a time. But yeah, all of our players are playing a lot of minutes right now, and we'll be good. We condition a lot in the summer, so we're very conditioned, and it's been good.
And then some of the experts are saying that you still have to win the conference tourney to make the big dance. Personally, I don't know if I agree with that. I think you'll have gotten there, but regardless, that's got to be frustrating to hear. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the media is going to say what they want to say. And for us, our mindset is just we have one game in the conference tournament. We're going to take it one game at a time, and everything else will fall into place after that.
And then on a more personal note, what would you say is like your pregame routine? How do you prepare for your games?
Pre-game routine. Coach Mack is very superstitious. One of the most superstitious guys. Yeah, that's an interesting fact about him. Not me. I'm not very superstitious. I really don't have a pre-game routine. go shoot before a game. That's pretty much it. That's all that I can think of.
Do you have any music you listen to that pumps you up?
I actually listen to worship music. It kind of calms me down. I've got a calm demeanor when I'm out on the court, and yeah, listening to worship music really calms me down. So I guess that's probably one of my pregame routines.
Gotcha. And what are some of your favorite things to do outside of basketball?
My biggest hobby outside of basketball is probably playing disc golf. Really got
Oh,
into
really?
that. Yep. During COVID, I got into that a lot, and yeah, I really enjoy playing it.
Yeah, it's a fun time. I played Ultimate in high school.
Oh, cool.
So.
Yeah, I suck at real golf, so had to skip it.
Me too. Me too.
A couple of things I wanted to follow up with what Joey asked. You talked about your demeanor being calm. I saw you smile in that Northern Iowa win, which was quite the nail biter when your guy had to go to the line, and it's Mascari.
Yep. Yeah.
Mascari had to go, and he made 2 or 3 to push you into overtime. But I saw you smile in that game. But well, do you? Is that just the way you've always been, kind of calm like that?
That's how I've always been. I don't really show emotions, but I guess when I hit that shot, all the emotions went out of me, and I smiled for once.
You know, that's a gift. You know, I always wish I had when I competed, because you have shown this season, the bigger the game gets, it seems like the more you come to play. With me, when I got, as the competition got more increased, I would get more, uptight, and that works against you. So that's a great gift you've been given. The other thing I wanted to say is about the experts. If you do not make it in, I don't want to wish you any bad luck, God forbid, but let's just say Bradley wins the tournament and they still don't let you in. That's a crime for 2 seasons in a row. Indiana State should have been there last year. You should be there last year, no matter what happens in the tournament. And I hope that the Missouri Valley Conference president has some sway. I swear he should just raise all kinds of heck, until something changes about this, because too much of it is now based on formulas, and not enough about watching the games. All right. I say this to all mid-major stars, so listeners are probably tired of this rant, but anyway. So I got 2 more questions and I'll let you go. Have NBA scouts attended your games? And if so, have you been able to hear some of the stuff they've been saying about you?
Yeah, they have been trying not to spend too much attention on it, but the agents are calling me and stuff like that. But yeah, me, Coach Mac, and my family, we'll all talk about that after the season. Just trying to focus on the season now, and I think those things will come later.
Right. And of course, you just said they'll come later, and I'm going to ask you a follow-up.
No, you're good.
Which is, I would assume that you're going to at least test the NBA waters in the sense that if you get invited to combines, you'll go and so forth.
Yep. That's if anything changes, but that's the plan right now. Still haven't talked about it, but I think that would be a smart decision.
Yes, and you're only a junior, so.
Yep. That's right.
You don't have to. You're in a great position, young man. So yeah, well done. Well, I can tell you, with all honesty, I really hope you guys make the tournament. You deserve it. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And I wish you and the team the best for the rest of the season. And please come back and visit us, especially maybe if you're going through the draft process. Maybe. When you get to the point where you're making a decision, maybe you can come check in with us and tell us how that all that experience worked out for you.
Hey, I would, but you're wearing an Eagles hat. They beat my Chiefs, so I'm kidding.
Wait! Time out. The only reason I am a Chiefs fan first. Honest to God, have been since I was 5 years old, which was like 30 years before you were born. I've always lived in the Philadelphia area, so I've kind of rooted for both teams. But when the Chiefs play the Eagles, I am Chiefs all the way.
Wow.
And I didn't really realize it till this Super Bowl. You know, they met a couple years ago,
Yep.
and the Chiefs pretty much. But this year, when they were getting beat down, I was getting so angry, just like I would at any other team. I was like mad at the Eagles.
Wow.
But I'm wearing a green shirt, so I had to match something with the shirt. So I have more Chiefs gear than you can imagine.
Okay. Sounds good.
So go Chiefs. All right. Thank you, Bennett. Please come back and visit us when you get a chance, be it this summer or next season.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So Joey joined me for the interview. Thanks, Joey. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought, first of all, I just want to say I really like Drake this year. I think they have a lot of potential. I was really impressed with Stirtz. I don't know, I found this Instagram page way back when, and that kind of shows me which like mid-major teams are balling out. So I've had Stirtz on my radar for a little bit now. I think he's a fantastic player. It was a great interview with him. I think Drake could shock a lot of people this year.
If they get there.
Which they should. As we've established.
All right. So now we're going to move on to our picks of the week, but this week is going to be a little different in that we're going to be just solely focusing on the conference tournaments that are starting this week. This is some of the smaller conferences, and we're just basically going to pick the winners. A lot of these conferences don't have a ton of NBA talent, but for these players, for those schools, it means a hell of a lot to win their tournaments because that means they go to March Madness. But before we even get into that, I want to review our picks from now. We were supposed to be doing this all year, but of course we had to take the unplanned break that we did. So right now we only have 3 picks in, none for Drew, 3 for me, 3 for Josh, 3 for Joey for the year. This is our year standing. So. And by the way, Joey, I found out, I did some digging after the results of these games came in. You know, I live near New York City. I have some contacts in Queens. So I started asking around, some of the old timers, like at the barbershops and stuff. And I come to find out that Josh's grandfather was known as Kneecap Tischler, a famous gambler and bookie in Queens.
True.
Because Josh won week 1 and so leads the season standings. He said Mizzou would crush Georgia. He was right. He said Clemson would crush Florida State. He was right. And unfortunately, he went with me with Kentucky against Texas. Kentucky had to lead the whole damn game, and they were getting points. And they basically ran out of gas at the end. They did name a mistake they could have made, and they made it in the last 3 minutes, and they ended up losing to Texas. Of course, injuries, I think, played a factor in that game. Joey also went 2-1, and I went 1-2. So we're basically applying as if we were making $10 bets. So right now, Josh is in front. He's plus $10. Joey's plus 8.5. I'm minus 13. So as we do this, we're going to pick our winners. The default is a $10 bet. So if we say we're taking Team X plus 200, that means we're betting 10 to win 20. And so we're going to just go through these smaller conferences. All right, so we're going to start with the American East. And the American East features basically Vermont has won this conference tournament 3 years in a row. It seems like even longer than that Vermont is the representative from this conference in the tourney. They actually finished in second place this year, 1 game behind Bryant. Actually, they may have 1 more game to go. Is their bracket set yet?
No.
I think they play. I think the whole conference plays tomorrow night. To finish up the standings. So right now, Bryant would be the number 1 seed. but that could change tomorrow. And I don't know what the tiebreaker is between Vermont and Bryant. So, Drew, who you got?
I'm going to take Bryant here. Vermont's been an absolute wagon. I think, Rich, since you and I have been teamed up, I think they've won it every year. And I feel like I'd probably take them every year. They're the only two teams in this conference I've seen play. So it kind of was a toss up, and I know that they're the 1 and 2 seed, so it makes it easy. But I do think Bryant definitely has the horses to compete. I know that Earl Timberlake's had a really good year, and I'm going to probably pronounce his last name wrong, but it's Raphael, is it Pinzon?
Pinzon.
Pinzon. The 2 games I've seen them play, they've been awesome, and that's kind of been the case for the year. I mean, I think they're combining to score close to over 30 a night. So with those two, this is part of me just trying to mix it up. I know that when the 2 teams have played, I saw them play each other, and Bryant blew them out the first time, and then the second time Vermont won, it was a little bit closer. So not having seen them play a bunch of other competition, but having seen them play head to head, I'm going to go with Bryant having the bigger win. They have the horses and guys that I believe can carry them. And knowing that they're going to be a 1 or 2 seed is going to give them a bit of that boost too. They're going to have, the slightly easier path. So I'll take Bryant at plus 200, but I do think out of a lot of these, this one might be a coin flip. I think it's one of these 2 are walking away with it.
All righty. Joey?
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I got Bryant as well. I like where they're at Ken Palm. They're much higher than really any other team in the conference. And I'm also a big fan of Raphael Pinzon. He's 6'6". He plays a lot at the rim. He can shoot. He can drive. He's the kind of guy that can get hot in March or get hot in a tournament like this, I guess in the month of March. And yeah, second in the conference in points per game. I think he's a really special player in this conference, and I think he can get them pretty far.
Josh?
I'm actually going with Vermont. So kind of lone man out, but I believe Vermont has basically dominated over the last couple of years with this conference. They're currently on a 8-game winning streak. I think this team, has been built. They keep building each year. I believe this team will continue to dominate the American East. I'm a big fan of Raphael Pinzon. He went to St. John's, came over here, is now the number 1 option for Bryant. They're a really offensive power team, but I believe Vermont, they've got a couple shooters on the team. They've got a couple guys that score in double digits. TJ Hurley, 16 a game. He's kind of their go-to guy. So I got Vermont going through.
All righty. And as you're going to hear me say repeatedly, I'm going to go with my preseason pick. Jake and I went through a lot of these conferences back in September. And I think he picked Vermont, and I think I know I picked Bryant. And Earl Timberlake was one of the big reasons, one of the better NBA prospects in this conference. But I'll tell you what, there is a sleeper out there, and that's UMass Lowell. They haven't played as well as I thought, but they have a guy named Max Brooks. And if this guy could shoot, he'd be NBA people would be looking at him. He can do everything else. He's averaging about 15 a game, and he's a good rebounder. He's a good shot blocker. He's good at just about everything except for making threes. I think UMass Lowell has underachieved this year, and some of these tournaments there's going to be a team come out of nowhere. So yeah. All right, so we'll move on to the A-Sun, and we just had a guest from the A-Sun, and that's from the first place team in this conference, Lipscomb, and that was Jason Ognasovic. I always say that wrong. And he is with the number 1 seed, Lipscomb, and they do have I'd say 4 other teams in this conference could win this. Jacksonville and Eastern Kentucky are the 4-5 seeds. I think North Alabama, the 2 seed, could win this. And Florida Gulf Coast isn't bad either. So, yeah, there's some talent in this conference. But I'll make my pick right now. I picked Lipscomb in the preseason, and I'm sticking with that. Now, I will say, by the way, Josh is getting plus 300 with his bet. The odds for Lipscomb, they're a heavy favorite. So you have to put up 1650 to win 10, and I'm going to do that. Drew?
Yeah, I'm taking Lipscomb here. I think that this team just has a lot of different ways to beat you. They've got 4 guys all in double figures. They probably have a guy who's going to be player of the year in the conference. And Jacob, is it Ognacevic? Ognacevic?
Yes. Vic. He says Vic, not
Okay.
Vitch.
Yeah, Vic. Okay, Vic.
Vic.
I mean, the guy's averaging 20 and 8 and shooting 60% from the floor and 41% from 3. Like,
he's the 12th leading scorer in the country.
Yeah, like, and I like what Joey said when we were talking about Bryant, right? Like, sometimes in these tournaments, it boils down to I have a guy I trust to win me basketball games. This is a guy that has won this team plenty of basketball games. Like I said, he's probably gonna be player of the year in the conference. And he has help. This isn't a situation like when we've talked about in the past, like a Drew Pember, like in past years where it's like, oh, Drew's really great, but he's going to score 35 a game and carry them, and eventually it falls flat.
It's funny. I was just thinking about when you were talking about it, who popped in my head was Drew Pember.
That's what, like in a past, but when I look and go, okay, he's got 3 other guys that have started all 31 games alongside him and all are averaging north of 11 points. Yes, his 21 a game is huge, but if he has 15, it's not like we're screwed. So I think they have the depth scoring wise. They play a bunch of guys that have been involved. And again, I think they have the best player and they're the favorite for a reason. So I'm going to take Lipscomb.
All right. Joey?
Yeah, I got Lipscomb too here. I really like Jacob Ognacevic, averaging 20 a game. Drew talked about him. He's a fantastic player. Lipscomb, they have the best rating. They have far and away the best defensive rating, which really caught my eye. They've been great defensively all year. They really lead in every major team statistic. In KenPom, they're all the way up ahead of Power 5 teams like Stanford, ahead of Minnesota, Florida State, Georgetown, right there with TCU. New people thought we're going to be way ahead of them. So it's been a great year for Lipscomb so far. I think they're far and away favorites. I'm with them here.
All right. Josh?
Yeah, I also got Lipscomb. I think this team has tremendous, upside. Ognacevic, he's 20 a game, 8 rebounds. This team's got all the tools they need in March. The shooting ability is there defensively, good mentality. So, I think it's going to be tough to beat this team in the conference tournament, but I got them to go for them.
Gotcha. All right. So we'll move on to the Big Sky. And do you guys know that there's one team, no matter what the standings are, has won this tournament 3 straight years? I think Danny Sprinkle coached this team a couple years ago. Since moved on, went to Utah State. Now he's at, where's Sprinkle now? He's at
Washington.
Washington. Right. So, but this year in the Big Sky, right now there's a 3-way tie. Is the bracket set for this? Let me see. The bracket is not set. So I believe they play their last games tomorrow night. But the standings as of now, Montana and Northern Colorado are tied for first, and they have a 4-game, those 2 teams have a 4-game lead on everyone else. Montana State, my preseason pick, is 8-9 in conference. So yes, Drew, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, I think I was kind of torn between these two. I'm going with Northern Colorado. I think it's pretty close. I just think it's going to come down to defense. I think offense. I think defensively, both these teams aren't great. Like you look at their advanced metrics and they both failed the test there, but having kind of just eye tested them recently, knowing this episode is coming up, I don't think either of these teams really defend, but I think Northern Colorado is the better offense. And so if you're going to have better offense going against a bad defense, I'll take that team, especially as the favorite. So I can see Montana winning, but I'm going to take Northern Colorado here. I think they handle business.
Big Sky, just like the Summit, defense is
Optional.
Yes. Well, I wasn't going to say optional, but I was going to say that those two conferences put up a lot of points. And Joey?
Yeah, I'm with Drew on this one again. I got Northern Colorado. Like you said, it's all about offense, and their offensive rating is 5 above second place, which is a pretty hefty margin, seeing as it seems like everyone else is between, they're sitting there at 115.5, everyone else is between 105 and 110 pretty much. So they've got a sizable lead there. They have some pretty solid players. Isaiah Hawthorne's been really solid this year, 17.5 a game, shooting 50 from the field, 40 from 3.
Drew should be very familiar with Isaiah Hawthorne. He comes from USF.
And Langston Reynolds as well, 17 a game, shooting 60%. So they have the scoring, they have the offensive metrics. So I think it's going to be done.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm actually going Montana here, plus 300. I was looking at this team, just like looking at their schedule, like you guys said, not a lot of defense being played in this conference. This team's won like 10 of the last 11 games. And, again, it's all about coming together in March, when's your peak. And I believe, I think, Northern Colorado, I think they're a great team, but, winning, 10 of your last 11, that shows a lot from the squad. So I kind of have Montana going through.
All right. Well, I'm going to spoiler alert for our listeners and you guys, but we are going to, in my opinion, there are 5 player of the year candidates in this conference, and we're going to have 2 of them on at once because they play for the same team. One of the player of the year candidates in this conference is Trent McLaughlin of Northern Arizona, Blaze Threet of Weber, Dylan Darling of Idaho State, and then Isaiah Hawthorne and Langston Reynolds of Northern Colorado are both going to be on the show later this week. And I'm friends with Steve Smiley, so I'm going to bet I'm going to take Northern Colorado plus the 165. 170. And but I think, Josh, I must say, you're almost getting double the odds with a team that has the same record in conference. That's might be the smart bet.
Yeah, it's a risk I'm willing to take. It's March. So.
Yeah. I don't blame you at all, sir. All right. So now we're going to move on to the Big South. And we had a player from this conference on early preseason, and that was Kamani Hamilton for High Point. And I think High Point in the preseason, Jake and I thought that they were one of the best mid-major programs out there, along with the Grand Canyons and the McNeese States, that the High Point was right there with them. And it turns out we were right. High Point won this regular season 14-2. Winthrop and UNC Asheville were 3 games behind at 11-5. So pretty good margin in between those teams. So we'll start with you, Drew. Who are you going with?
I think High Point's the best team. I'll keep this simple. I'm going to go with High Point.
All right. Joey?
Yeah, I got High Point too. They're top 100 in KenPom, killing it in offensive rating and efficiency differential. 5 wins over second place. I don't think it's a question, really.
Yeah. I hear you. Josh?
Yeah, I'm going with the favorites too. I think High Point has just a tremendous offense. It can really make some good noise in the madness. I think this team is Sweet 16 caliber. Just from offensive rating, 120, defensive rating, one of the best defensive teams mid-major wise. So yeah, I don't see this team losing in the tournament.
Right. Again, it was my preseason pick, and I want to sort of tell you guys, I think, I'm just looking at my draft board right here, I think in this conference, we have as many draft prospects from High Point as the rest of the conference combined. leading off with Kwame Hamilton. They also have Demarion Williams, Joslyn Bodo, and Demarion Williams comes over from Texas Tech. Bobby Pettiford came over this year from East Carolina, and he started with Kansas. So this team has some, power conference players on it. Maybe they're not as good as we thought they were going to be, but they're still really good, especially in this conference. All right. So now we move on to the Colonial. Now, the Colonial usually has, this is usually one of your better mid-major conferences. This year, actually, not Colonial anymore. I forgot. They changed their name this year. It is the Coastal. Charleston has been the dominant team in this conference for a while. Hofstra makes some noise once in a while. Yeah, I would say, but Charleston has been the dominant team here. This year, Townsend won the regular season by 2 games. UNC Wilmington was 14-4, is 2 games behind them. Charleston, 3rd place, 13-5. Then William Mary at 11-7. By the way, Monmouth has one of the best scores in the country that I saw light up Rutgers for 37 points, if I remember correctly, and that's Abdi Bashir, who I've been trying to get on the show ever since. Even Monmouth's coach said at the time that he doubted Abdi would be back at Monmouth next year after putting 37 on Rutgers. So, yeah. So, Drew, start with you again. Who are you picking here?
Yeah, I'm going with Townsend. So I saw this team play I saw them live. I saw them play their very first game of the season when they came to the Bay Area and took on St. Mary's. And they lost. It was a relatively competitive game. And they had to say they had a bad start to the season is an understatement. They basically didn't win against a Division I opponent until like the end of December, but have played really, really good basketball since. They're really hot. They're playing really well. Tyler Tejada has been killing it the last couple of weeks, like looking like a just an absolute star in the conference again after a slow start. So I'm going to go with Townsend because I think they're hot right now. I think the confidence is up, and this looks like a completely different team than the one that I saw earlier in the year. I think they're just playing really good ball, and I think Tejada is the type of guy that could make some noise. So I'm going to take Townsend.
All righty, Joey.
When we started this, I enabled myself 2 kind of shot in the dark picks, and I'm using one of them here. I have Monmouth at plus 5,000. 2 words for you: Abdi Bashir.
Right.
This dude is elite. We saw him torch Rutgers. When he gets hot from 3, there is nothing you can do about it. 40% on the year, shooting about 10 a game is ridiculous. People are talking, the problems with Monmouth. It's as if they're, all the way at the bottom with plus 5,000. They're only 6th in the conference, which really isn't that preposterous. If Abdi Bashir gets hot, I really think Monmouth could pull something off. Drew and I, we were saying earlier, takes one player in this kind of tournament like that. If he gets hot, which he's shown he can, because I don't know, he may want to go out hot because he's not coming back to Monmouth after this.
Right. Joey, I got to ask you a question. Do you know where Monmouth is?
Couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. But it's where Abdi Bashir is.
It is about 60, 70 miles, maybe 75 miles south, definitely east of me and a little south. It's at the top of the Jersey Shore. So it's kind of like a Jersey Shore campus. But at the very top, just south of like Newark and Secaucus and all those smelly towns in Jersey. So Josh, who you got?
Yeah, I'm rolling with Towson here. They had a great year. They won their conference. Tyler Tejada, 17-4. He's had a great season. And I don't see any team, maybe UNC Wilmington, I think has done a phenomenal job as well. But I'm really loving to see from this year, what they've done. and just how they've, they work together as a team offensively and defensively. So I got Towson here.
Do you know who my preseason pick in this conference was? Townsend.
Yes.
Have you noticed there's a pattern? If I picked them to win the conference in the preseason in August or September, they won the conference. All right. So listen to me, folks. When I speak, I want you to listen. So anyway, the reason why I liked Townsend back then is they had so many players returning compared to the rest of this conference. I love Joey's pick with Abdi Bashir. I'd be very happy to see Monmouth get in. At least if Abdi comes on the show. But anyway, I'm going to go. And by the way, the odds, for Joey, he's got plus 5,000. So for 10, he's going to win 500. We got plus 450. So we win 45 with a $10 bet. So now we'll move on to the Horizon. This tournament's already started, folks. So let me bring up the bracket and see where we're at. I believe it started yesterday. No, it's not this tournament. It's the ASAN with Lipscomb tournament has already started. So this tournament, I believe, maybe tips off tonight or tomorrow. But the top seed is Robert Morris, believe it or not. I don't ever remember. I think, first of all, Robert Morris is a relative newcomer to this conference. And so, yeah, I don't remember them ever being toward the top of the standings in this conference before. Cleveland State is the second seed. Milwaukee's the third. Youngstown's the fourth. Fort Wayne is the fifth. All right, guys, we'll start with you, Drew. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, I took Robert Morris. I think they're the one seed, but I think they are the best and most balanced team in the conference. You look at them like offensively, they're right around 76 points a game, kind of middle of the pack. Defensively, they're really good, holding teams right at 70. So you have that kind of blend that you want to see. They're scoring at a pretty good clip. They're holding teams. I'd like to see that number maybe a little bit lower into the 60s, but I get it. Sometimes these lower conferences defense it's a little bit more optional. So I think they're a really solid team. I mean, they've got Cam Woods leading the way. And Alvaro, I cannot pronounce this last guy's name. I tried.
Campos.
Not that. Cam Woods and Alvaro unless I'm looking at
Alvaro Campos, right?
No. Not Campos. It's Alvaro Folguares. Unless this is a different last name. At least the research I was doing.
It's listed as Alvaro Folguares Campos. So I guess.
I eliminated the part I couldn't speak.
Okay.
On the draft board, he's Alvaro Campos.
I don't feel
also,
like I'm
when I wrote Robert Morris, because I asked if he would be on the show, he's only a sophomore. And he's a big Spaniard who is really playing good ball. So we asked him to be on the show, and he might be. Yeah, I just referred to him as Alvaro Campos, and they knew who I was talking about. So let's stick with that.
Yeah, I think those two are playing really good basketball. They're averaging about 30 points a game together. And like I said, they look like just a really well balanced team. I haven't seen a bunch of this conference, but when I look at a team that's kind of near the top in defense, right in the middle of the pack on offense, two guys leading the way, I'll take my chances with them.
All right, Joey, who you got in the Horizon?
So this is a really tough one. I feel like you could make a case for a lot of teams. Robert Morris is up there, Milwaukee's up there, Cleveland State's up there. So I couldn't really decide between any of those three teams. So I kind of went a different direction. I went looking at the odds, and I see Fort Wayne behind all those guys in all the metrics toss up between those three, and then there's Fort Wayne right behind all of them. And then I see that I see them for plus 625, and then I see they have the top player in the nation, or top player in the conference, I should say, in terms of points per game, and Jalen Jackson. I started watching some highlights of him, and he's got one of the craziest layup packages I've seen a mid-major player have.
He's good player.
A great player, yeah. And I liked his tape. I liked the odds, and I said, you know what, let's take an underdog here. So, yeah, I got Purdue Fort Wayne.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Josh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. I'm gonna do Robert Morris at plus 265. They won 7 straight. I really think they're one of the teams that really they have really shown great offensive ability. Defensively, it's there. Cam Woods, is a little inefficient. Shooting under 40%, but I think he's got enough to horsepower to lead this team. And I will like to say that I was looking at the bracket for the Horizon League, and it's a little odd. I see that the 1 and 2 seeds, they can match up in the semifinals.
No. I think this is one of those that this is one of those that reseeds.
Oh, reseeds. I see.
They
reseed. I see how that works.
They reseed so that the higher seed. And did they have a central location for this one, or is this one of those where they play at the higher seeds team? I'll let you know in a sec. Yeah, the higher seed.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, wait, actually, so yeah, this is one of those that reseeds, and then the semis and the championship game are played at a neutral location of Indiana, which would probably favor Fort Wayne if they got that far, because they're the only team from Indiana there in the top 5 seeds. So yeah. So did I know I cut you off because we were confused about the bracket. So it's kind of hard to predict the bracket because no one knows until the game.
Yeah, but I'm still going with Robert Morris, even with the little slight confusion.
Right. I gotcha. All right. So I'm going to look over the odds here like Joey did. And my preseason pick was Northern Kentucky. Of course, they finished in the middle of the pack, about 500 record. They're plus 2,000. That certainly would be an interesting bet. Robert Morris, obviously, at plus 265. I do like Joey's thought of Fort Wayne. I mean, when I look at the player of the year candidates in this conference, it would be Jackson of Fort Wayne, and Campos. I think he's probably a little too young, but he certainly has talent. I should say this. He's probably the best pro prospect in this conference. You also have Brandon Noel of Wright State, who's been a stat stuffing machine for pretty much since his freshman year. But again, that team didn't do well this year either. And Anthony Roy of Green Bay was leading the nation in scoring for a long time. I think he was averaging about 27 a game, but he doesn't qualify anymore because he got hurt about 12 games in and hasn't played since. Basically, I'm kind of making up my mind on the fly. I think I'm going to go with Robert Morris, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I want Avera Campos to come on the show, and if they win, then I can say to Alvaro, I can look him in the eye and say, I picked you to win the Horizon Tournament. So, yes. So you can see that, but I really do like Joey's thought of, because I think the top 4 teams, there's not a lot separating them. And so with Fort Wayne getting those more plumper odds, that certainly is tempting. All right, so we shall move on to the Missouri Valley Conference, which our guest comes from. And I believe, Joey believes, maybe the rest of you guys believe that this conference, if Drake wouldn't win it, that they would still deserve a bid. So it could be might be a 2-bid conference league. Of course, Drake beat out Bradley for the regular season title. It was a close race, though, between Bradley and Northern Iowa. Belmont is a really good team. And funny enough, we interviewed for Belmont. Well, actually, he didn't play for Belmont. He played for Memphis at the time. But that was Jonathan Pierre, who came from Nova Southeastern. He was the first Division II player we ever talked to on the show. And last year when Jonathan Pierre came out from Nova Southeastern, who's always like top 5. They're like the Duke of Division II. And Pierre was like a 6'9" point guard type of player. And he went to Memphis, and there was a lot of schools were after him, and a lot of talk about his impact, and he barely played. So, but now he went to Belmont this year, and he's one of the best players in the conference. So, yeah, so that's where we're at there. Drake, number 1 seed, Northern Iowa, or excuse me, Bradley 2, Northern Iowa 3, Belmont 4. Drew, what are you thinking?
Yeah, first off, I do agree. I think Drake should get in no matter what. I think that they've had such a great year. I mean, 3 losses. They've beaten high major teams, not the most, creme de la creme high major teams. I mean, beating Miami at this point, I could probably find a high school team that could do it. But
yeah, but back then we didn't think that.
Back then we didn't know it. So I do agree with Joey. I would love to see this team get in regardless. I am taking them. Number one reason, I think they have great players that have really kind of shown people, as someone who works in Division II basketball, that, hey, some of those top-tier D2 programs, they can hoop, that they got some guys that can play. But when you're telling me your defense is surrendering just under 60 points a game, that tells me a lot about your team's ability to play anywhere in any kind of instance, because we've always heard the old adage, defense wins championships, defense travels. And when you're giving up 59.2 points a game and still turning around and scoring 71, that tells me you're a bit of a buzzsaw, because you're damn near 20-piecing teams on average. So I do like Bradley. I think that's the 2 teams that meet. And I think in that 1-game setting, I mean, Bradley's a really good team too. But I'm going to take Drake here. I think it's Drake, Bradley for the championship. I'll take Drake. But if Bradley somehow pulls it off, I think Drake should get in no matter what.
All right. Joey?
Yeah, I got Drake too. I'm going to be honest. I think this is the one. I think this is the team of all the teams that we've discussed or will go on to discuss. This is the one I have the most confidence in. We look at KenPom. I mean, they're ahead of teams like USC, that Rich, I know you had doing really well this year. They're ahead of teams like Arizona State that brought in big players. They're ahead of Rutgers by 10 spots on KenPom. They've had a phenomenal season, 27-3. Bennett Stirtz, fantastic player. Great to talk to him today. Leading the Missouri Valley in most major statistics, in points and assists and steals and minutes. He's been phenomenal. We've seen his ability to turn his game up to the next level when playing against better competition. Drake is leading in offensive rating, defensive rating.
Yep.
Yeah, I have so much confidence in them. I think they're really going to shock a lot of people.
They beat Vanderbilt. I mean, who just beat Missouri, who has beaten Tennessee and Vanderbilt has a bunch of great wins this year. They beat Kansas State, even though Kansas State hasn't been consistent, when Kansas State's clicking, they've beaten some really. Kansas State swept Kansas. They swept them this year. So this Drake team is for real. Josh?
I'm gonna go Bradley, plus 270. There's no doubt what Ben McCollum has done at Drake has been phenomenal. I think he's a phenomenal coach. Wherever he goes, he wins. He ends up being the first in his conference every year as of late. But I believe that this Bradley team can really shoot the ball. They've got four or five rotation guys that can shoot at least 40% from 3. And that's a tremendous number. That's what you need in March. And, they've beaten they split with Drake. They lost at Bradley, but they beat him at Drake, which was a great win for them. I do believe, if Drake does not win in the tournament, I do believe that they are a tournament team. They've got some, good wins under their belt, higher major teams, but I'm rolling with the Bradley Bears here.
I hear you, Josh, and it's tempting. It really is tempting. And it might be where the smart money is, because you're getting almost 3-1 while we're getting even money, basically. I am going with Drake, basically, that's more of a heart pick because I want to see them get in the tournament, and I'm afraid if they don't win the tournament, they're not getting in. But I'll tell you what, if Bradley does get in, and they're the team that scares me the most in this conference, beside Drake, watch out for them in the tournament because they are a tough team. They have two little guards that are lightning fast. Their names are Duke Dean and then freshman Jaquan Johnson. These guys are little, but they are like impossible to stay in front of. They have a big in Darius Hannah, who's ultra efficient around the basket, but he's also expanded his game where he's a really good 3-point shooter. And he's now too, I believe they've moved into power forward. He doesn't have to play center for them anymore like he did last year. So I saw this Bradley team. I saw them beat somebody up pretty good. I don't think it was. Maybe I saw them beat Drake. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, this Bradley team is good. But
I just want to say, if they don't win, let's say Bradley takes them out, I will never forgive the committee for back-to-back years robbing us of Indiana State and then Drake if somehow they don't get in. And this is the prime example of why the tournament does not need to be expanded. If Drake can't get in based on their resume, I don't want to hear about some crap ACC bubble team that's not even on the bubble getting in. I'm just saying, like, there's no way that can happen, in my opinion. The tournament is great because teams like Drake get in and then go to an Elite Eight. It's not great because UNC gets in because of a brand and gets absolutely crushed in round one. So that would piss me off, man.
I totally agree. Totally agree. All right, so I'm going with Drake, but I think maybe the smart money's on Bradley. The Northeast Conference, Central Connecticut. There's not personally. I don't know if there's a ton to say about the Northeast. It's probably the weakest conference in this whole group we're talking about. Not a lot of NBA talent. I picked Central Connecticut preseason. They were the top team in the conference. They are the number 1 seed in the bracket. These teams, I don't think, is the bracket finalized? Yeah, it is. And this is one of those that reshuffles. Yeah. This is one of those that reshuffles. Now, Wagner, Jake picked Wagner, but they're a 6 seed going in. So, Central Connecticut pretty much dominated this conference this year. And so that's who I'm going with. Anyone in a disagreement? Do we have anything if anybody has anything to add here, I'm just thinking this is kind of all apologies to the Northeast Conference, but all right, we'll move on.
I will say, watch out. Maybe LIU Sharks, Long Island, they've been playing good ball as of late, but I still have Central Connecticut winning.
All right. Yeah, Connecticut had the most returning players. And they also have a player from my alma mater who moved up from D2 to D1, so I'll be rooting for them as well. But that's not the reason why I'm picking them. They were pretty much the class of this conference all year long. All right, so now we're going to go to the Ohio Valley tournament. And in the Ohio Valley, by the way, I forgot to mention this. You know how the Missouri Valley always calls their tournament Arch Madness? Well, now the Big Sky, because they have Idaho and Idaho State, they are calling their tournament. Are you ready? Starch Madness.
That's pretty good.
Wow, that one hurt.
All right, so I can tell you right off the top, I picked Little Rock to win this conference, and but Little Rock lost one of their best players very much early on in the conference. So I'm going to give some thought to it while you guys are telling me who you picked to win this conference, or who are picking to win the tournament. Drew?
Yeah, I went with, what is it? SIUE. I haven't seen too much basketball here. I think it's between them and then Southeast Missouri State. I think those are the two teams that I'd look at. Part of me here went with the smart money. I've taken a couple of safe picks here. I will say this, though. I do think Southeast Missouri State is rightfully the favorite. They've been pretty much the best team. I mean, it's not the most powerful conference. I don't have too much to say here. This was more of a smart money pick. Try to make a couple extra bucks here.
All right. Joey?
Yeah, whenever I'm in doubt, I kind of just rely on the stats. And that was kind of the case here because it seems like it's, SIUE or Southeast Missouri State. And it seems like a two-way race to me, at least. So I went and I looked at the numbers, and Southeast Missouri State, they're leading in offensive rating, defensive rating. They have a better record. They're higher on KenPom. So, yeah, my money is with them.
Josh?
I went with SIUE, and I've seen them play ball before. This past season, Indiana, they played against SIU Edwardsville, and they have a really good player, averaging almost 20 a game in Rayshawn Taylor. He can really shoot the ball.
Yeah.
He's their go-to guy, and in March you need those guys. So I believe this team has enough to get through in the OVC.
So after giving this some thought while you guys were talking, because typically I've been riding with the team that I picked preseason, though I will say in the Missouri Valley, I picked Murray State. They had a lot of returning players. They had some good young players coming back that were like freshmen last year and returning sophomores, but Murray State really has had really mediocre season at best. But anyway, I digress. Little Rock lost one of their best players in Keelan Robinson, who I believe started off at the University of Arkansas. He was like a high four-star recruit. But they still have Mawani Wilkinson, who played for LSU for 4 years, and Jonathan Lawson, who started at Memphis and then moved to Creighton. And is one of the candidates for Player of the Year in this conference. So it probably will go to Josh's guy, Rayshawn Taylor, who's averaging 19 a game, or actually 19.2. So, he's having a hell of a season. But I still think, even though Little Rock has been in the middle of this conference, and what's their seed in this tournament? So even though they're a 4 seed in this tournament, and they really had a disappointing year at 18 and 13, I'm going to go, again, this is not one of those conferences we focus on a lot because not a ton of NBA talent. But I'm riding with Little Rock, and I like my odds. It's one of the few gambles I'm actually taking in this contest. I'm getting 450 plus 450. I'm going to put my neck out a little on this one. All right. So we'll move on to the Patriot League. And in the Patriot League, I believe the bracket is set here, or nope. They've still got one more set of games. Oh, no, it is set. All right, so Bucknell American had been winning this conference for most of the year, but they must have slipped toward the end. So Bucknell is the top seed. American is the second seed, and Colgate, the team has dominated this conference for years, is the third seed. Definitely an off year for Colgate. So who you got, Drew?
I'm going to take Bucknell. I think this team is super hot. They have one loss dating back to right at the end of January, which was a double overtime loss to Army. I think they're playing just really good basketball right now. I did kind of go back and forth with American. I think it's kind of a 2-horse race. It is weird seeing Colgate not be up there.
Yeah.
Rich, again, since we've been doing this, I think they've been kind of one of those pencil them in and forget about it.
I think Colgate has won this conference something like 8 years in a row.
Yeah, it's something crazy. I think them and Vermont have been the two teams that we've been the most part. We've just been putting them in and moving on. I just think they're playing really good basketball right now. I mean, they're beating teams pretty handily too. Their wins have come in a pretty convincing fashion. You pull up the metrics. They're ahead of pretty much anyone else by a decent margin. When you look at their KenPom rating, I believe they're ahead by quite a bit. I mean, I know when you get to some of those lower teams, it's pretty marginal. It's margins that separate teams, but I'm going to roll with the Bison. I think they're just hot right now, and that matters. It feels good to go into a tournament knowing you've basically only lost in almost 2 months or a month and a half, and it was a double OT loss.
Alrighty. Joey, who you got?
Yeah, I got Bucknell too. As much as I'd love to give it to my dad's alma mater of Lafayette, I just can't because they're horrible every year.
Do you know
But
where
anyway,
Lafayette? Do you know where Lafayette is?
that I do. It's in Easton, Pennsylvania.
That is correct, and I'm not far from there either. I grew up about 45 minutes north of there, and probably about 45 minutes away from me now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the other direction from New York.
Yeah, I know the city. I don't know where in Pennsylvania it is. I just know it's in Easton. But anyway, Bucknell, they like Drew said, they've been hot. They're first in the conference in efficiency differential, and I really like their center, Noah Williamson, averaging 17 points a game, 7.5 rebounds per game. He's got a really good offensive skill set around the rim, and he's been trouble for Patriot League defenders all year, and I think that'll continue into the tournament.
Alrighty. Josh?
I'm going with the other guys. I'm going with American. They've had a good year. A little iffy, as of late, but I think they've got one of the best players in the Patriot League, in Matt Rogers. I think he's been a tremendous player all year round for this team. And I think it's going to be close. It's really between American and Bucknell, but I'm going with American. I think they have I guess an easier path than Bucknell, I believe. I think Colgate's had a down year. They're going up against Armies, so I'm going with American.
Now I think just the opposite. I think American has the tougher path, but I too am going with American. I just don't. If I'm in this tournament, I don't want to see Colgate, no matter what the record is. And they still have a big man in Jeff Woodard, who at this conference level, for this conference is, he's not very athletic, but he's big and huge, and he can score. But yeah, I love Matt Rogers. He's really good inside, outside player. And also American was my preseason pick to win this conference. So now we move on to the Southern Conference, and there's some good teams in this Southern Conference. No getting around that. And so this has been a good battle. The first seed is Chattanooga. The second seed is Greensboro. The third seed is East Tennessee State. And the fourth seed is Samford. Samford, Jake and I both picked Samford to win this conference. And actually, we thought that they were one of the better mid-major programs. So it is a little surprise to see them as a fourth seed in this tournament. But East Tennessee and Chattanooga especially have impressed me. And they have really good guard play. They have some really good scores. But Drew, what are you thinking?
I literally just changed my pick. I was going back and forth. I had Samford in there. Hell, I even thought about maybe just taking a bit more of a shot in the dark and going with Furman. I think they've been playing pretty good ball recently. I ended up on Chattanooga. I've seen this team live, and I just think offensively, this team runs some really good stuff on offense. They're a top 50 overall offensive team when you look at their just offensive rating. They know how to put the ball in the bucket. They've played some pretty good teams in the non-con. Like I said, they came out to the Bay Area, played St. Mary's at St. Mary's, gave them a game, and that's a tough place to play against a team that's tough. I do think this is close. I think you can't go wrong with Samford or Chattanooga. Those are the two teams I would bank on, but I think that there's a couple teams here that could make some noise. So I think Greensboro is solid. Like I said, I even thought about taking Furman, kind of more a little bit shot in the dark, but they've been playing good. Like they're 7-3 in their last 10, but I'm going to go with the Mocs.
All righty. Joey?
Yeah, I got Samford here. They were amazing last year, came up so close in that first round against Kansas. Shouldn't, ref missed the call, kind of screwed him over.
Yep.
Regardless, Bucky McMillan, he has been very successful at Samford the last few years. I think it's only a matter of time before he moves on to a bigger program. They bring back their point guard, Rylan Jones. They get two new scorers in Trey Fort and Jaden Brownell. With the success they had last year, being able to keep some pieces, added new ones. Yeah, I like them. I like them in the tournament. I like them for here, and if they can get in, I think they're another team that I think could actually pull off another upset in March Madness.
All right, Josh?
Yeah, I'm with Joey. I've also got Samford. It's kind of a down year a little bit. They're currently at the 4 spot for the bracket, but I believe this team always known for their shooting ability. They, it's tough game last year against Kansas, but I think with this team, great coaching. I think Trey Ford, he's a tremendous player. Great shooter, almost 40% from three. If you get them on the wrong night, and they can shoot the lights out. So I'm going Sanford.
All right, I am going to buck a trend that basically I've been going with who I picked in the preseason, and that would have been Sanford. But I am really surprised that East Tennessee, I think this is basically a 4-team toss-up between the top 4 seeds. And when I look at the odds, East Tennessee is plus 500 compared to Chattanooga at 250 and Sanford at 350, Greensboro at 400. And I'll tell you 2 guys to watch out for East Tennessee is Jaden Seymour, a forward for this team, and Kwamari Peterson. These 2 guys are probably both in the running for Player of the Year in this conference, especially Peterson. And they can play. They can play at any level. A lot of these teams in this conference, this is a good conference, can play, pretty much with the big boys. So watch the winner of this team in March Madness in the big tournament. But I'm going to buck a trend and go with East Tennessee at plus 500. All right, so we're winding down at the Southland. I'm going to say this, and if you guys have anything to add, McNeese. When Jake and I ranked all the mid-major one-bid teams coming from the mid-major conferences, we thought were one-bid conferences. Jake and I had Grand Canyon number 1 and McNeese number 2. McNeese cruised through this conference this year at 18-1. I'm kind of almost surprised they lost the one. The next best teams were Nicholls State and Lamar at 13-6. McNeese has legitimate talent, and it's one of those cases where if I added up all the people on our draft board for McNeese, it would be greater than all the other prospects I have from the rest of the teams in this conference combined. So I'm going with McNeese. You got to pay a hefty price for this one. It's minus 650, and it looks like we're all going that one. Does anyone have anything to add about the Southland tournament?
Will Wade.
Watch out for Nicholls, though, I will say.
Yeah?
Yeah, one team that McNeese lost to in the conference, you're getting good value as well. I believe at, I want to say their odds were at... Is it plus 4,000? It's I think it's a good gander, good bet they can have. Plus 3,000. But I still think McNeese will win the tournament.
Joey, you were going to say something?
Just Will Wade. That's all you got to say. He just wins.
He does. Yeah. He does. I have mixed thoughts on Will Wade, but you are correct. So I see in the Summit League, I haven't put my pick in yet, but every person has gone with a different team. So we'll start with you, Drew. Who are you going with?
I'm taking North Dakota State. This is another one where there's I think there's a lot of good teams here. I mean, the odds kind of show you that there's a lot of teams in that plus 280, 240, 250 range. I like Jakari White. I mean, the guy's a bucket. I think he can really play. I think this team's going to be able to put up points with pretty much anybody if they need to. I think there's some really good teams. I think South Dakota State's right there with them metrically as well. I personally, I've seen North Dakota State play the most. I've seen the Bison play the most out of this conference. So I'm probably the most familiar. I've seen Jakari White do some really awesome things on a basketball court and have some big scoring output. So I'm going to go with them based a lot on the eye test that I've seen.
Before I move on to Joey, I just want to say that this was kind of a 3-team race at the top. Omaha is the top seed at 13-3. St. Thomas of Minnesota was 12-4, 1 game behind. South Dakota State was 11-5, 2 games behind, and North Dakota State was 10-6, 3 games behind. So actually kind of almost a 4-team race. So not so surprising. We're going to have 4 different answers here. Joey, what's your pick?
Yeah, y'all have the 3 favorites. I gave myself 2 shots in the dark, and I'm taking my second one here. I have North Dakota. I got 2 more words. Trayson Eaglestaff, one of the best names in college basketball. Also happens to be an absolute bucket. I still remember watching him drop 40 on Alabama's head, shooting 15 of 30, 8 of 18 from 3. Look, I think when I'm betting on college basketball, I bet for the players I like to watch, the teams I like to watch, and I am a Trayson Eaglestaff fan for life. So I got North Dakota here.
All right, Josh. This is great that we have 4 different answers here.
Sure, it is. It's good. I'm going with the St. Thomas, Minnesota Tommies at plus 240. All metrics show, this team, E difference, the best offensive and defensive rating. They've got, great balance of players. We got, Barton, Miles Barnstable, a great player. The shooting is going to be a big question for this team. They definitely have some great talent, shooting 40% from 3. But, at the end of the day, advanced stats don't lie. So I'm going to go with the Tommies here.
All right. I'm going to go with someone who's actually turned us down, who was was going to be on the show, and then he turned us down, decided against it. I don't know why, but anyway, this is Oscar Clough, Washington State transfer. The big man was a solid player at Washington State, but he has just dominated this conference. Listen to these numbers. Over 17 a game, over 12 rebounds a game, close to 3 assists a game. He shot 64 from the field, 60 from 3 on very limited attempts, and 78 from the free throw line, and he gets there 5 times a game. Oscar Clough at this level is just a handful, and I'm going to take South Dakota State at plus 250 to win this tournament. There you go, Oscar. I picked you even though you shunned us. You shunned us, I say. All right, so we'll move on to the Sun Belt, and this is a conference that has good amount of talent. Some good players, good teams, and the interesting thing is the top 2 seeds get double buys, and the last 4 teams in the conference have to play. They have to play in. So in order for a 11 seed, they would have to win 1, 2, 3. They'd have to win 5 games in 5 days. Whoa, the odds of that. All right, so let's go through Southern Alabama, the number 1 seed in this conference. James Madison, 2nd seed. Troy, the 3rd seed. Arkansas State, the 4th. Marshall, the 5th, and App State, the 6th. Last year, this was kind of a 2-team race between James Madison and App State. And you felt like last year that the loser, which turned out to be App State, should have gotten some consideration for the tournament, because I think App State only lost like 4 games last year, and I think 2 of them were to James Madison. Should have got some consideration for the NCAA tournament, but they didn't. All right, so we'll start with you, Drew. Who you got in our final conference of the day?
So I think Arkansas State's the best team, but I think there's literally 4 teams at 13-5. And so I think Arkansas State's the best team, but I took the odds on this one. So I went with James Madison at plus 330. I just thought that it was pretty good value for a team that, in a very close race, I'm like, I can get plus 330 odds on that team, that has been playing pretty good basketball in a conference that's very close. Arkansas State is my gut pick, but if I'm trying to make some money here, I'm going to take James Madison.
All right. And Drew's right. There was a 4-team tie at 13-5 at the top of this conference. And Marshall in 5th place was 12-6, only 1 game behind. All right, Joey, who you got?
Yeah, I had a similar mindset here. as Drew. I couldn't really make up my mind, so I looked at the lines. I looked at, who won it last year? James Madison won it. Okay, looked at the lines, plus 330, great. So, it was a tough decision. A lot of really good teams y'all mentioned, but I had to go for the money, just like Drew.
I hear you. And Josh, do you have similar logic?
I do actually. I'm with both Drew and Joey. I got the Dukes. Getting good value. This team has played some really good ball as of late. They only have to win 2 games in order to win their conference. So it's getting good value at plus 330. And don't have to play as many games. Well rested team. So I'm gonna go with the Dukes.
Yeah, you guys, it's very smart money. Considering now, I'm going with Arkansas State. In my opinion, the top 3 mid majors coming from one bid conferences. So that would exclude like the A10 and the American Conference, which we thought would at least get 2 teams each. I thought that was Grand Canyon number 1, McNeese number 2, and Arkansas State number 3. I saw Arkansas State play a couple times this year, and they're not as dominant as I expected them to be. But obviously, the odds makers, even though they have to play an extra game, have them at plus 200, which is the lowest odds of any in this conference. So you guys are getting a team that finished with the same record and playing one less game at plus 330. So that might be the smart money. And I think I would go with James Madison over Southern Alabama. However, I'm going to ride with my preseason pick. I think Arkansas State does have the overwhelming talent in this conference this year. It does have a better depth than the other teams, but really tempting to go with JMU or Southern Alabama. So, all right, that wraps up our picks for the week, and this was fun. We never did it this way before. Well done, gentlemen. So, if you want, we haven't had a mailbag question, actually, I haven't been checking regularly either. As far as I know, we have 1,000 mailbag questions. Like, what do you think of this LeBron guy jumping from high school to the NBA? You think he can do it? That's probably one of the questions in our mailbag. So if you'd like to send us a question, please email it to admin@hoopsprospects.com. We also take questions. I'm just laughing at my own jokes. We also take questions via social media on Twitter @hoopsprospects, on Instagram @thehoospros, and on Facebook @hoopspros. So I did that very rhythmically so I wouldn't laugh. As always, I want to thank our listeners, and I want to thank our special guest, Bennett Stirtz. It was really nice talking to him. If you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back later this week with more player interviews. We have 4. We have 4 lined up. Next week we'll be back. The gang will be back, and we'll preview the bigger conferences and talk about who we think are going to win those. So I'm sure we'll have all kinds of good opinions on like the SEC tournament, the ACC, Big Ten, and all that good stuff. All right. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap this up?
Best time of the year, boys.
It is.
Best time of the
March,
year.
let's go.
Yeah.
Let's see if the Bucks can actually get in. I don't know.
Josh is going to Monaco for spring break, while Joey and Drew and I will be going to like D2 basketball tournaments and stuff like that.
I'm actually probably going to be going to the D2, potentially going to our women's team made our conference tournament, so I'll probably be heading down there. Potentially, we'll see. They might
I'm going to the Pennsylvania Conference tournament, D2 game tomorrow night. So
they got a good one of theirs. Is it Strasbourg? They have a good team.
Yeah, that's my alma mater.
Yeah, they have a good team. They actually have an opening.
Gannon's always good too.
They actually have a job opening there. I might apply.
Well, you're going to be the next SID at Dayton, but that's
God, man.
That's between you and I.
I've committed some time to get that job.
So I also probably going to the Big East tournament, and I may even go to Rutgers season finale on Sunday versus Minnesota. So yeah, all kinds of things. And the Eastern Regional is in Newark, New Jersey. So I may be going to that too. That would be the Sweet 16. So yeah.
If I didn't have work, I was going to go to the WCC tournament, but it just didn't work out. Once our women's team qualified, I wasn't going to, they were on the bubble and they got in. So if they didn't go, I was going to end up going to that. But so we'll see.
Maybe Gonzaga can turn the tables from last year when
I personally think that they are still the best team. I can give you guys a long analysis. I know you guys don't want to hear it probably, which I totally respect, but I still think they're the best team. I think Randy just does a really good job on I think he builds his rosters to be Gonzaga and not much else. Put it this way. I'm not very high on that team in March, but
I think they're looking a lot better than they did last year.
I agree with that, but I just think they're I don't know. I've seen him a lot in person just because they're so local, and I never walk away going outside of the Santa Clara game, which I think said more about Santa Clara just mentally being midgets. I never walk away from a game like that and just be like, damn.
Well, I saw them destroy Oregon State, and I think that was at Oregon State.
Yeah, they just played Oregon State at home the other day, and that was a much closer game.
No, this was at Oregon State's place, and they
Which is surprising because Oregon State is awful on the road. Great at home, awful on the road. I'm so surprised. I expected those results to be totally flipped.
Right.
They gave them a great game here in Moraga. It was by 10, but it was late free throws. It was a 3-point game with just under 2 minutes to go, and I was like, wow, this is really surprising. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Good job, and we'll do this again next week.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Sounds great.